On a tranquil morning, still clad in her linen sleeping robe and lost in daydreams while a maid combs her hair, Sarnai murmurs, "Would it be possible to meet Princess Aria?" The attending maid nods and assures her, "I'll see what can be arranged." Led by her maid, Sarnai makes her way to Princess Aria's yurt. "Lady Sarnai," announces a maid as they enter. Aria, seated behind a large desk designed for official matters, looks up. Her yurt is divided into a front area for official business and a more private space beyond. Sarnai bows respectfully. "Princess Aria, I hope my visit isn't an inconvenience." "Not at all," Aria responds with a warm smile, gesturing to a seat. "I'm always pleased to see you. I just had to keep this meeting under wraps, or Princess Sashi would be all over us." Papers strewn across the desk attest to Aria's role in governance. "How are you settling into your new environment?" she inquires. "Considering everything, I'm managing reasonably well," Sarnai replies. Aria nods, a flicker of interest in her eyes. "I hear you've had several meetings with Prince Tuu. I'm glad to hear that." Sarnai smiles wryly. "Thanks to my maids, I've learned quickly that gossip is a favored pastime here. If you're inquiring about Prince Tuu and me, we are navigating our situation. He has clear goals, but to his credit, he's granted me a fair amount of space and freedom." "That's good to hear," Aria says, pausing thoughtfully before continuing. "What brings you to me today? You requested this meeting, so I assume there's something you wish to discuss." Sarnai leans forward slightly, her voice earnest. "I would like to understand more about the prince from your perspective." "The prince is my brother," Aria begins, her tone reflecting both affection and respect. "I'm 2 years his senior, and we were quite close until he was about 10. After that, due to our separate paths and expectations, we drifted somewhat. Yet, we've always remained as close as siblings could be. At 20, my father arranged Tuwu's marriage to Princess Hana. Initially, they were happy, genuinely in love. The loss of their first child was the first major blow to their relationship. A second miscarriage devastated them both. Over the next 5 years, as Princess Hana was unable to conceive, and Tuwu saw his siblings having children and leading seemingly content lives, his resentment towards his wife grew, though he never let it show with his siblings. He became particularly close to Sashi, which I suspect was his way of coping. Tuwu has a lot of love to give, but he's also driven by the need to secure his legacy, ideally before he rises to become the Khan. As Aria speaks, a maid approaches and whispers in her ear, "Excuse me, Lady Sarnai. I need to attend to something urgently. I won't be long." Aria excuses herself and exits the yurt. Sarnai surveys the room, which is lined with bookshelves holding about 24 books. She browses the documents spread on the table, picking one up to examine it more closely. Aria approaches and comments, "This is called writing." She adjusts the document in Sarnai's hands to display it correctly. "This one is in Chinese," she explains before placing it back on the table. Sarnai expresses her desire, "I would like to learn how to write." Aria, pleasantly surprised, responds warmly, "That is a very noble endeavor, Lady Sarnai. I'm sure I can arrange for someone to teach you. It's actually a wonderful idea." She pauses thoughtfully before adding, "I will find a tutor to teach you Turkic first, and perhaps Chinese later. Not many here are proficient in Chinese. It's quite challenging." Grateful, Sarnai smiles and says, "Thank you, Princess Aria. Learning Turkic will be fine for now, I'm sure." As she stands to leave, Sarnai adds, "Thank you very much for your time. I'll be eagerly awaiting my first lesson." After exchanging farewells, Sarnai departs. Outside, Sarnai inquires of her maid where Princess Sashi's yurt is located. The maid points down the path, indicating it's just 2 yurts away. Upon receiving permission to enter, Sarnai steps into the princess's yurt. Sashi immediately rushes over to embrace her, exclaiming joyfully, "Sarnai!" She rests her chin on Sarnai's chest, adding softly, I am so happy to see you, Sarnai. Sarnai, smiling broadly, gently strokes Sashi's hair. I'm very happy to see you too, Princess, she replies. Then, thinking of their shared interest, she suggests, Do you think we could go shooting arrows tomorrow afternoon? Yes, of course, Sashi responds, stepping back but still beaming with excitement. That's settled then, Sarnai says, giving Sashi a warm hug before she departs. Sarnai is grooming her horse, ensuring it's in good condition when Sashi arrives, accompanied by 5 men. After exchanging warm greetings and Sarnai dismissing her own guards, the group of 7 rides peacefully toward a suitable spot to set up their shooting range. Once they find the perfect location and set up the target, Sarnai signals all the escorts to step back to give them room to practice undisturbed. Sashi hands a bow to Sarnai, saying, This is a gift for you, Sarnai. Thank you, young princess, but I thought this bow belonged to your sister, Sarnai responds appreciatively. Sashi smiles. I asked her, she doesn't mind. As they begin shooting arrows, Sarnai broaches a delicate subject. Tell me, Sashi, you know many people would very much like to see me with Tuwu. Sashi nods, releasing another arrow. Sarnai presses on. And you? Is there someone special waiting for you? Sashi pauses, her gaze shifting to Sarnai. No, there is no one. I am still too young, but my family keeps telling me that I am not a child anymore. She stumbles. That you have to take on more responsibilities? Sarnai offers gently, noting Sashi's discomfort. Yes, exactly, Sashi confirms. Iria keeps telling me that now I am a woman, I must follow my sister's footsteps. I must act like a real princess. In a burst of frustration, Sashi grabs an arrow, loads it, and fires. The shot veers wildly off course. Sarnai reassures her, Don't worry about that, Sashi. You don't have to listen to Arya. You still have plenty of time. She places a comforting hand on Sashi's cheek. You are a princess. You can do whatever you want. Sashi visibly relaxes, comforted by Sarnai's words. To lighten the mood while they shoot arrows, Sarnai shares, I asked Arya to arrange for a tutor so I can learn how to write. Sashi looks surprised. You don't know how to write? In my tribe, we never needed it, Sarnai explains. Lucky you, Sashi responds. I have to endure endless sessions on Turkic, Chinese, mathematics, astrology, and all sorts of etiquette with an old goat. Her comment draws a smile from Sarnai. I could help you learn, Sashi offers cheerfully. Sarnai responds with a playful tone. Thank you, but I suppose I'll have to start with the old goat first. Their laughter echoes around them, lightening the mood. Sarnai has established a routine in the village, dedicating her mornings to personal well-being, her early afternoons to tutoring, and the remainder of her day to either spending time with Princess Sashi or playing Togu's Kumalak with Tuwu. Initially, her tutor attempted to impose a standard curriculum, but Sarnai directed him to concentrate solely on writing. Over time, she realized she also needed to improve her formal Turkic language skills. As the days passed, Sarnai's attitude towards Tuwu began to soften. Gradually, she saw different sides of him, which led to a shift in her feelings. Until one day she decided to act. Now that the maids are familiar with the protocol, they leave the yurt whenever Tuwu arrives. Today I want to change the rules of the game, Sarnai declares. Tuwu, suspicious, asks, What do you mean? More often than not, I've let you win so that we could converse freely without any pressure, Sarnai begins, causing Tuwu to scoff incredulously. Are you saying you let me win all those times? I find that hard to believe. Sarnai responds calmly, There are important things I need to tell you. I need your trust. I'll share more about myself, but be warned, I won't reveal everything today. Perhaps in the future, if I come to fully trust you. Tuwu, now serious, nods. This sounds serious. I'm listening. First we play, then we talk, Sarnai says, pausing for effect. You start the game. Suspiciously, Tuwu moves his bids, but it doesn't take long for Sarnai to dominate the game. Tuwu grows frustrated with his crushing defeat. The second game goes similarly, increasing Tuwu's annoyance. Have you been practicing? He asks, clearly upset. The third game is even more humiliating for Tuwu, who struggles to maintain his composure. Noticing his frustration, Sarnai places her hands over Tuwu's for the first time, initiating physical contact. This gesture immediately calms Tuwu, and as he meets Sarnai's earnest gaze, he realizes that something significant is about to be disclosed. Sarnai begins, I believe there is a plot against 2 people in this court. Tuwu interrupts, You think there's a conspiracy against us? Sarnai clarifies, Not against us, but against Princess Hana and Sashi. I suspect Arya is orchestrating it. Tuwu reacts with shock. Arya would never harm Sashi. I didn't say she would harm Sashi, Sarnai continues, pausing for emphasis. Arya wants you to marry me, or someone else who can secure the future of your family and keep the peace to your clan. She wants Princess Hana out, one way or another. I don't have concrete proof of her plans, but I fear for Hana's well-being. I suspect Arya believes Hana is too unpredictable and could jeopardize the family if you were to take a second wife. Hana has assured me she will accept her fate. She is very aware of her situation. I believe as long as she is treated with respect, Princess Hana will cooperate with your wishes. But I think Arya prefers not to take any risks. This is reckless even for my sister. Tuwu responds, troubled. Hana's father would never agree to such a scheme. That's precisely why Arya has promised Sashi's hand to Lord Yuanbao for the day after her 14th birthday, Sarnai reveals. Stunned, Tuwu exclaims, What? How could she promise Sashi to my wife's father? If this is true, I will not stand for it. How do you know all this? This is where things you don't know about me come into play. I read a letter from Lord Yuanbao to Arya that was on her desk. Tuwu frowns, incredulous. What are you saying? You don't know how to read. Sarnai corrects him gently. True, I didn't know how to read Turkic, at least not back then. But I am fluent in Chinese, both spoken and written. Tuwu looks perplexed. How is that possible? You're from the Chulim tribe. Sarnai explains. Let's just say I received formal education in China before joining the Chulim. That part of my history I'm not ready to share yet. My knowledge of strategy games like Tuguz Kumalak, Go, Xiangqi, and Shogi also stems from that education. Tuwu, deep in thought, finally speaks. If what you say is true, I need to confront Arya. It's implausible that she acted alone. My father might be involved as well. What do you suggest? Sarnai responds, It's likely that Arya couldn't have promised Sashi's hand without your father's knowledge. I'm not sure if he's fully complicit in her plans. First, we should inform Hana about what we suspect. We owe her that much, and we need her trust. Then, you'll need to confront Arya, especially if you're opposed to Sashi being sent away. Tuwu firmly states, I would rather go to war against Lord Yuanbao than let him take Sashi. Sarnai continues, Then I'll need to speak with Arya again. Please follow these steps carefully. Make sure no one else knows until we've spoken to Princess Hana. She pauses thoughtfully. Tomorrow, arrange a private ride for you, Princess Hana, and me, so we can discuss this discreetly. Tu smiles wryly. That might be where your plan falls short. Hana despises riding, but it seems she'll have to manage. Tuwu stands up and Sarnai follows suit. Gently taking her hands in his, Tuwu kisses each one. I'm not certain if everything you've told me is true, but I'm willing to take this leap of faith for you, he says earnestly. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, and one more thing before I go. We should try a different game next time. He departs, leaving Sarnai with a thoughtful smile. The next day, under a sky heavy with dark clouds, Princess Hannah and Prince Tuwu awaited Sarnai outside her yurt, mounted on their horses for a secluded ride deep into the prairie, away from prying eyes and ears. Princess Hannah, upon hearing what Sarnai revealed, promised her cooperation, though she was visibly disappointed in her father's involvement. Today, Tuwu confronts Arya. Outside, the dreadful weather mirrors the gravity of the situation, with heavy rain drenching everything. Inside her yurt, Sarnai waits alone, the wind rattling the walls fiercely. The door swings open, revealing Tuwu, drenched from the storm. Sarnai quickly helps him out of his soaked coat and adds more logs to the fire, stoking it to a warm blaze. They sit in silence for a moment, the only sounds the crackling fire and the rain against the yurt. Tuwu, staring into the flames with a distant look, breaks the silence. "You were right about everything. My father is involved too," he admits, turning to face Sarnai as she hands him a cup of mead. "I've issued an ultimatum. If Sashi is sent away, it will mean war." His tone hardens as he continues. "I told them that Hana supports my decision to take a second wife, which left them without excuses. Naturally, they were displeased, especially since they had promised Sashi to Lord Yuan Bao. I suggested they might need Hana's influence to mitigate this situation. An ironic turn of events, isn't it?" Sarnai nods, her voice soft yet firm. "I am proud of you, Prince Tuwu." Tuwu begins, his voice somber. "I have not been blind to your pleas throughout the time we've spent together. I think it's time to give you what you want from me, an apology. I'm sorry for taking you from your parents' tribe. I should never have let my instincts override my judgment. I apologize for all the suffering I've caused you. The violence and the humiliations, I promise to make amends." Sarnai stands and walks over to the pile of wood, her back to Tuwu as she picks up another log. She crouches at the front of the pile, her shoulders shaking as she sobs quietly, masking her tears from view. After a moment, she wipes her tears away and places a small log into the fire. Returning to her seat across from Tuwu, both avoid each other's gaze for several long minutes. Tuwu, breaking the silence with a thoughtful sip of mead, ventures, "Tell me about your secret, Sarnai." Sarnai speaks softly. "You're not ready for that yet." Clearing her throat, she continues, "Instead, let me tell you about China, where there are yurts made of stone that tower taller than the tallest trees, where city contains 100,000 people, where all people from all set of skills live there. The art and display is amazing. Vast fields of crops of various vegetable and fruit can nourish the entire country." With this, Sarnai begins to weave grandiose tales for Tuwu, filling the darkening hours until night fully descends. In the morning, Sarnai asks, "When does Princess Arya take her bath? I've never seen her there." The maids explain. Princesses usually perform their toiletries at home, preferring warm water and privacy. Occasionally, Princess Arya goes to the river early in the morning when the weather is nice. With the weather still dreadful, there's no opportunity for bow shooting with Sashi. After Sarnai's tutoring session concludes, Prince Tuwu and Princess Sashi come by to spend the afternoon with her, much to her pleasure. Sashi announces, "We brought you some new games. Tuwu mentioned you prefer games of chance. He said something about other games being unfair." They all share a laugh, with Tuwu playfully ruffling Sashi's hair in a gentle tease. "I have a gift for you," Tuwu tells Sarnai, handing her a wrapped piece of fabric. Unfolding it, Sarnai discovers a beautifully engraved knife nestled within a sleek sheath. Sashi, unable to contain her excitement, exclaims, "This is beautiful, I love it. May I see it?" After receiving a nod from both Tuwu and Sarnai, she carefully takes the knife, Sarnai adding, "Be careful, it looks sharp." Sarnai finds solace outside the village, basking in the freshness of the morning air while facing the rising sun. The peaceful moments are precious and rare. After some time, she rises and walks back to her yurt. This routine continues for several days, with Sarnai visiting the same spot, where she befriends a dog that comes to greet her. By the fourth day, she starts bringing food for her new companion. That same day, she finally spots Princess Arya approaching down the path, flanked by her maids and guards. Sarnai stands, brushes off her dress, and moves towards the princess. "Good morning, Princess Arya," Sarnai greets her. "Good morning, Lady Sarnai." Arya responds with a smile. "What a coincidence! Are you headed to the river as well?" "No, not at all. I was hoping to see you. May I join you on your walk?" Sarnai asks. "Of course, it's always a pleasure. What brings me the honor of your company today?" Arya inquires as they start walking. Sarnai says, "I've been thinking on several matters lately and was hoping I could discuss my thoughts with you." Arya responds warmly, "Absolutely, what's on your mind?" Sarnai begins, "I've been reflecting on a few things that have happened since I arrived in the village, and I'd value your perspective." "Please go on," Arya encourages. Sarnai explains, "There are some events that seem peculiar. For instance, the extravagant attire I wore shortly after my arrival seemed to carry an underlying message that perhaps was intended to unsettle Princess Hana." "Really?" Arya exclaims, surprised. "Yes, and it struck me as odd that the Khan's welcome gift was a set of combs and hairpins. Typically, a man of his stature might offer jewelry or horses. This gift felt too personal, almost as if it was a gesture from one woman to another before a ceremony," Sarnai continues. Arya considers this, then responds, "Perhaps the Khan understands the needs of women better than we thought." Sarnai adds, "And at the banquet you had me seated next to you, surrounded by your sisters. I wanted you to feel welcome among us," Arya explains with a reassuring smile. Sarnai probes with another query. "I have another question for you, Arya. When you visited me, did you intentionally bring Sashi? Did you arrange for us to bond?" Arya responds thoughtfully, "Sashi is a free spirit hard to rein in. You remind me of her, but with more savvy. I believed you could positively influence her and perhaps grow fond of her as well." Pausing, she adds, "Where are you going with this?" Sarnai's tone turns serious. "It has come to my attention that someone has been manipulating and monitoring me ever since I arrived. After much thought, I've concluded that you were orchestrating it." Arya stops to face Sarnai squarely. "You are indeed perceptive and would make a remarkable Khatun. You're confirming my suspicions of your manipulations as well. Recently, Tuwu confronted me, accusing me of scheming behind his back in ways that are uncharacteristic of him. I suspected an influence, but couldn't pinpoint how it was being executed. Now the specifics seem less important than recognizing the adversary I'm up against. I'm actually quite impressed. Your tutor often remarks on your exceptional abilities and eagerness to learn. I see now there was no coincidence in your actions. Should you assume a more significant role in the future, I would be comforted knowing Tuwu has support from someone of your intellect." Sarnai shifts the topic slightly. "What about Princess Hana?" Arya's expression softens. "It appears Hana has made her peace with the situation. She could have resisted and been sidelined, forgotten in her own yurt. Our laws would have allowed her to object to Tuwu taking another wife if she had substantial reasons, but she would likely have been humiliated in defeat. If there's one thing I know about Hana, it's that she does not take well to humiliation. By her actions or another's, it might have been her undoing. Now here you are, a remarkable young woman I underestimated. I thought it impossible for someone to possess all desirable qualities: youth, beauty, wit, resilience, emotional intelligence, knowledge, and though not highborn, it seems that may be the least important factor. You're a rarity I never anticipated. Thankfully, time is on our side. The Khan remains healthy, Hana is unlikely to provide an heir soon, and Tuwu's actions allow us time to reflect on this new dynamic." Sarnai inquires, What do you mean? Arya continues. Tu-Woo has been away on a hunt for 3 months. He managed to resist his urges, likely out of some romantic notion towards you, despite his harsh treatment of you as a means of relieving his frustrations, small sacrifices to prevent the one thing you feared most. Now that he's returned, he avoids Hana, likely fearing she might conceive. Since his arrival, the prince has been ravaging throughout half of the female staff, making up for the lost time, I guess, which oddly seems to have made him more considerate and patient toward you. Sarnai, unimpressed, retorts, and how is that supposed to comfort me? He's a powerful man with needs, which I understand better than you might think. Arya concludes, now, we both understand the rules of the game. I've been a willing participant. It's your turn to decide how to play. Sarnai feels her options are limited. I don't see a wide range of choices. It's not as if I can simply leave and return to my tribe, can I? Arya answers, only time will tell. What's your plan now? Determined, Sarnai states, first, leave Princess Hana alone and stop having my maids spy on me. I've grown quite fond of Sashi. A victory for you, perhaps, but I'm committed to protecting her. And so is Tu-Woo. Arya nods, accepting this conclusion. It's good we're moving past this chapter, looking towards an uncertain future. I just hope your actions haven't jeopardized the Khanate. Lord Yuan Bao might not match our forces, but I'd hate to lose thousands in a war over Sashi or Hana. Remember that. Sarnai looks around, absorbing the scene of the village, the green forest, the distant mountains, and reflects, our roles as women are challenging in this world. Tu-Woo once said you'd have been a great Khan if born a man. Unfortunately, that role isn't yours, though I'm grateful Tu-Woo values his family deeply. She bows respectfully. Have a good day, Princess Arya. As Sarnai walks away, Arya calls out, I'll ensure your privacy is respected from now on. No one in the imperial family has that privilege. As days turn into weeks, Sarnai finds solace in her routine with Sashi and Tu-Woo, sometimes enjoying the company of both together. Their days are filled with games, horseback riding, archery, and leisurely walks, marking the rhythm of her life. Occasionally, she seeks solitude in the forest, where moments of melancholy wash over her. During these times, she reminisces about her past life, cooking, tanning hides, and smoking fish, simple tasks from her tribal days that she sometimes misses. Yet she recognizes that these are remnants of a life she has left behind, deciding it's best they stay in the past. Tu-Woo nudges Sarnai gently. It's your turn. Are you lost in thought again? Sarnai takes a slow sip of her now cold tea and responds softly, I feel that today is the day. Setting down her cup, she rolls the dice with a thoughtful flick. Tu-Woo, eyeing her curiously, picks up the dice and gives them a shake before rolling. With a puzzled smile, he announces, the game is over. Sarnai stands and circles the table, her movements deliberate. Kneeling beside Tu-Woo, she meets his wary gaze with an expression void of emotion. Methodically, she unbuttons the top of her garment to reveal first her left shoulder, then the right one. Her hand then moves toward Tu-Woo, mirroring her own actions on his clothes. Amidst an enveloping silence, she gently nudges Tu-Woo to lie down on the carpet. Strategically positioning herself above him on hands and knees, they face each other, their hearts pounding audibly. Maintaining eye contact, Sarnai settles onto Tu-Woo's abdomen. Stealthily, her right hand slips to the back of her dress. In a swift motion, she draws her knife and places the blade lightly against Tu-Woo's collarbone, her other hand securing his throat. She feels Tu-Woo's strong hands grip her forearms in response. Prince Tu-Woo! Sarnai begins, her voice tinged with controlled anger. The trial is over. You have been found guilty of abducting me, of tearing me away from my loved ones and my clan, and of forcibly claiming me for your own. She applies slight pressure to both the knife and his throat, yet Tu-Woo does not resist. Tuwoo's eyes survey the charged scene before he releases her arms, signifying surrender by lying still. "I vowed to draw your blood before you could ever claim me," Sarnai declares, pressing the blade deeper, piercing the skin to let a steady stream of blood emerge, making Tuwoo grimace in silent pain. Sarnai removes the knife from Tuwoo's wound. Seizing the moment, Tuwoo quickly regains control. He captures Sarnai's arms, rolling her beneath him in one fluid motion before planting a swift kiss. Under the weight of his body, she gazes up, her eyes swirling with a myriad of questions. After a brief moment, she thrusts her lips against his. Their kiss deepens, passionate and fervent, as her fingers gradually loosen their grip on the blood-stained knife. Hours later, they remain intertwined, the bedsheets stained with blood from each of them, marking the intensity of their earlier engagements. Tuwoo gently caresses Sarnai's head as she rests against his neck, periodically planting soft kisses across her face. His hand slowly traces a path from her hair down to her ear, neck, shoulder, and along her arm. Carefully unfolding her arm, Tuwoo inspects the scar on her collarbone, tracing its texture with his thumb. Softly, he murmurs, "I'm sorry." Looking directly into Tuwoo's eyes, Sarnai asks, "Will you marry me?" With a tender smile, Tuwoo replies, "Of course I will." They seal their promise with a deep kiss, Sarnai shifting to lie on top of him as their embrace deepens. Sarnai, dressing somewhat sheepishly, asks, "Do you think people will know?" Tuwoo, still shirtless and smiling, assures her, "We spent the night together. I guarantee the entire village already knows." He leans in for another kiss. Sarnai probes further, "Are you sure you want this to be together?" "There's nothing I've wanted more since the first time I saw you, and nothing that happened last night has changed that. But now I must tell my father," Tuwoo responds. "I'd like Princess Hana to be the first to know. We owe her that," Sarnai suggests. Tuwoo notes, "Traditionally, the Khan should be informed first." Seeing Sarnai's disappointed look, he quickly adds, "Here's what we'll do. We'll go together. You tell Hana and I'll tell my father, but I'll delay the official announcement." Sarnai nods in agreement. "Can we at least spend the morning here together, just the two of us?" Sarnai asks. As Tuwoo puts on his shirt, he replies, "I'll order us some breakfast." During the quiet meal, Tuwoo senses something is amiss. "Is something wrong?" he asks. "May I ask you something?" Sarnai says softly. "Of course, anything," Tuwoo responds reassuringly. "Would you be willing to provide a dowry?" Sarnai asks. Surprised, Tuwoo responds, "That's not our custom. What do you need?" Sarnai lists her requests. "I would like 4 stallions, 6 mares, 10 iron axes, 10 bows with 500 arrows, 20 hunting spears with as many iron knives, 200 feet of rope, 50 feet of fabric, 4 fur outfits, and a set of combs." "That's quite the list. What do you need all this for?" Tuwoo inquires. "I want you to send it all to my parents as compensation," Sarnai explains. "It will be arranged," Tuwoo assures her, nodding his agreement. Early afternoon, Sarnai and Tuwoo approach the Khan's yurt, feeling the weight of many eyes upon them. They pause outside Princess Hana's residence. "Are you sure?" Tuwoo asks, grasping her hands. Sarnai nods affirmatively. Tuwoo proceeds, while Sarnai watches him enter the grand yurt. "Welcome, Lady Sarnai. To what do I owe this pleasure?" Hana inquires, rising to greet her. Sarnai senses that Hana might already be aware of her situation. "Princess, I'm not sure if you've heard, but there has been a significant development between Prince Tuwoo and myself," she begins, then pauses. "Please continue," encourages Hana. "Prince Tuwoo is on his way to speak with his father. He plans to announce our intention to marry. I wanted you to be the first to know. If it were within my power, I would have sought your consent. It's my sincere hope that despite everything, we can maintain what I believe to be a budding friendship, or at the very least mutual respect," Sarnai explains earnestly. Hana steps forward, takes Sarnai's hands in hers, and kisses her on each cheek in a gesture of respect and acceptance. I appreciate you telling me this personally, Lady Sarnai. I understand the importance of Tu-Wu taking another wife and cannot think of anyone better suited to stand by him in this new chapter. I believe we will be excellent co-wives and together work towards the betterment of the Khanate, Hana responds warmly, gesturing towards her table. Would you join me for tea? We have much to share. Outside the village, Sarnai oversees a group of 6 men as they prepare to set out with 18 heavily loaded horses. From a distance, Tu-Wu, Sashi, and Hana observe her interactions with the men. As the caravan departs, Sarnai waves farewell. Returning to the watchful trio, Sarnai joins them at a vantage point overlooking the departing caravan. Thank you for the sword, Tu-Wu. I hope Kutlug will appreciate it, she says, her eyes tracking the distant figures. What were you discussing with the men for so long? Tu-Wu inquires. I was ensuring they memorized a message for my parents, as none of them can read. I needed to be certain they understood it correctly, Sarnai explains. How long will it take them to reach your family? Sashi asks, a hint of concern in her voice. About a month to travel to my tribe's current location. I'm worried they might have already moved to the winter site since the leaves are turning yellow. It will be more difficult to find them then. Sarnai responds thoughtfully. Tu-Wu reassures her. My men are skilled trackers. They'll locate your family. As they begin walking back, Sashi takes hold of both Sarnai and Tu-Wu's hands. Tu-Wu speaks up. The shaman said we should move to our winter grounds within 20 days. I'd like us to have our wedding before then. Sashi, beaming with excitement, exclaims, Yes, I can't wait to stand by your side, Sarnai. Sarnai, leaning in toward Sashi, assures her, I wouldn't want anyone else there. She then glances at Hana, seeking her reaction, and is comforted by Hana's approving smile. The wedding, despite the persistent rain, unfolded beautifully. As Sarnai approached the Khan and her future husband, flanked by Sashi and Hana, the atmosphere was charged with a poignant sense of ceremony. All 3 were stunningly adorned, but Sarnai, in particular, captivated everyone's attention. She was draped in pristine white fur, marked with subtle grayish stripes, and her long, shiny hair cascaded elegantly down her back. With remarkable efficiency, the entire village was dismantled the days later, ready for the long migration eastward to the winter grounds. The journey was arduous, yet they managed to reach their new location just as the first snowflakes began to fall, coinciding with the first signs of Sarnai's sickness, the auspicious sickness that had been fervently awaited for. A yellow liquid fills a bronze bowl set on the floor, with now drops falling rhythmically. A maid parts a fabric wall to exit a secluded room and hands the bowl to an elderly shaman woman, accompanied by Tu-Wu. The shaman lifts the bowl, intoning sacred spells to summon guidance and foresight from the spirits. She continues her chant while gently swirling the bowl, then pauses to inhale the aroma before taking a deliberate sip. As she does this, Sarnai steps out behind the maid. The shaman exclaims, This is a boy, bringing smiles to Sarnai and Tu-Wu. Tu-Wu tenderly drapes an arm around Sarnai, his hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, while Sarnai places her hands over his, their joy palpable in the shared touch. One late morning, a servant enters Sarnai's and Tu-Wu's yurt, seeking permission before approaching. Princess Sarnai, she begins respectfully, please forgive this intrusion, but the men from the party have just returned. Overwhelmed with joy, Sarnai exclaims, Are you speaking of the men sent to my parents? Yes, princess, the servant confirms. Without hesitation, Sarnai rushes outside, despite the light snowfall and thick snow underfoot, inadequately dressed for the cold. A maid quickly drapes a heavy fur over Sarnai's shoulders as she scans the area, uncertain where to go. Turning to the servant, she asks urgently, "Where are the men?" The servant leads her to the leader of the returning party. As they enter his yurt, the man, weary from his 4-month journey, and yet to reunite properly with his own family, stands to greet her. "Lady Sarnai," he says, as his wife also rises, adding, "Princess Sarnai, it is an honor to have you in our home." Realizing her abruptness, Sarnai apologizes. "My apologies for barging into your yurt like this. I can come back later if it's a bad time." The man's wife exchanges a knowing glance with her husband and smiles reassuringly. The husband insists, "Not at all, princess, please sit." Eager for news, Sarnai asks, "Please tell me about your journey. Did you find my parents?" The man recounts the arduous 2 months it took to locate the Shulam tribe. "Upon arriving, I have to admit the reception was cold," he explains. "We spent a great deal of time talking about you. Learning that you were alive and well moved your mother and sister to tears." He continues, detailing the gifts and messages they delivered and how they described Sarnai's new life and status as a princess. Knowing their daughter has found happiness despite everything has filled their hearts with joy, he concludes, bringing a sense of closure and contentment to Sarnai. The gifts were graciously received and shared among the clan. Kutlug, absent at the time, had his sword entrusted to his father. Sarnai's sister, Almira, was particularly taken with her new hairbrush, hardly able to set it aside. The man explains that he had delivered Sarnai's personal message to her family in a private moment, which had moved them deeply. Looking towards his wife, he gestures for her to fetch his bag. "I have a message for you from your family," he says. "My dear daughter, thank you for all your gifts. Knowing you are alive relieves our hearts more than anything else. We regret that we couldn't protect you, but we have prayed to the spirits daily for your safety. To know that you are safe, well, and soon to be wed to someone who loves you fills us with joy. Please think of us sometimes. We will never forget you." Opening his bag, he then hands Sarnai a folded gray skin from his bag. As she unfolds the fur, she recognizes it as her mother's shawl. Holding the shawl close to her heart, the floodgates of her emotions burst open, and she breaks down sobbing. As winter wanes, the landscape remains draped in snow, though less densely than before. On a clear day, under a deep blue sky stark against the white, Sarnai ventures into the woods, escorted by 2 bodyguards. Her footsteps, heavy from the additional weight of pregnancy and her thick fur clothing, sink 4 inches deep into the snow, her breath visible in the cold air. The strong sun warms the trees, dislodging patches of snow from the branches with a familiar cascade of thumps, followed by the rustling of limbs relieved of their burden. Standing in the midst of the forest, Sarnai gazes skyward with a broad smile, savoring the beauty of the day. Suddenly, a noise from behind snaps her attention back. Turning, she sees one guard collapsing without apparent cause. In the next instant, an arrow embeds itself into the chest of the second guard, who is reaching for her sword. Sarnai, in shock, turns and runs, hindered by her pregnancy and the heavy clothing. Glancing back, she spots a cloaked figure advancing rapidly through the snow. Each labored step sends puffs of snow swirling around her. She feels her strength draining with every panicked move. Her footing fails, and she tumbles headfirst into the snow. Struggling to rise, her first attempt fails. Her second is thwarted as the man pins her down. As he secures her hands and rolls her over, her face etched with terror about to scream, she realizes her assailant is Kutlug. "Kutlug? Is that really you?" Sarnai gasps in shock, recognizing the figure before her. "What are you doing here? Why did you kill my guards?" "I came to rescue you, to bring you back to your family," Kutlug asserts, trying to pull her closer. Struggling against his grasp, Sarnai pleads, let me go, get away from me." With a forceful gesture, she tries to break free from his grip. Khutlug reluctantly releases her, stepping back as Sarnai, now dusted with snow, regains her footing. "Why are you doing this? I'm staying," she says, her voice filled with confusion and anger. "I've been searching for you for 5 months. I'm not leaving without you," Khutlug replies, anger rising in his voice as he grabs her hand, trying to drag her away. Sarnai resists, striking at the hand that holds her. "This is my home now. I can't go with you. Can't you see I'm with child?" Sarnai reveals, hoping to deter him. Taking a moment to assess her condition, as her thick clothing had concealed her pregnancy, Khutlug releases her hand in shock. "You can't stay with these people. They abducted you. They abused you. Come with me. I will take care of you and your child," he pleads, desperation in his tone. Sarnai firmly responds, "It's not like that anymore. These people are my people now. They are good people and I am staying. Please just go back and forget about me." In a fit of frustration, Khutlug grasps Sarnai's shoulders and pushes her against the nearest tree, shouting, "They don't deserve you. You are coming with me. You belong with me, not them." Khutlug's demeanor shifts from anger to shock as Sarnai's expression changes to one of deep sadness. Tears welling up, she whispers, "I'm sorry, Khutlug. I didn't want this. You left me no choice." Releasing her, Khutlug stumbles backward, his eyes widening in pain as he looks down to see Sarnai's blade buried in his abdomen. He collapses to his knees, blood dripping onto the pristine snow, while Sarnai, tears streaming down her face, turns and flees as fast as her body will allow. The captain of the guards enters Arya's yurt abruptly. "Apologies for the interruption, my lord," he says, nodding at Arya. "Princess." Then turning to Tu Wu, he continues, "I regret to inform you that Princess Sarnai was found emerging from the forest in a state of distress without her escort. She has been taken to your yurt, my lord." Tu Wu, a mix of anger and worry clouding his features, quickly heads out asking, "What happened to her?" As they walk briskly, the captain explains, "We're not sure yet. I've sent 5 riders to investigate the matter." He pauses before adding, "There's more, my prince. The princess had blood on her hands." Upon entering his yurt, Tu Wu finds Sarnai on the bed, surrounded by maids who are either cleaning or comforting her. Repeatedly, Sarnai murmurs, "I don't want to lose my baby. I don't want to lose my baby." Tu Wu rushes to her side, but when he tries to ask questions, Sarnai only curls tighter into a fetal position, clutching her belly. Later, the captain re-enters the yurt. Tu Wu, noticing him, approaches quickly. In a low voice, the captain reports, "2 of the princess's guards have been brought back. One is severely injured and the other did not survive. They were struck by arrows." He pauses to let the information sink in, then continues, "There's more. We found signs of a struggle in the snow along with traces of blood." Holding up Sarnai's blood-stained knife, he adds, "This was discovered near the scene. 3 of our riders are currently tracking what seems to be a single, wounded individual." Tu Wu's gaze shifts back to Sarnai, his expression hardening with resolve. "I want him dead. Ready my horse. We leave at once." The trail is clear in the snow, and Tu Wu, accompanied by his captain and 2 guards, rapidly closes the distance on horseback, raising clouds of snow dust behind them. Soon they find the assailant, Khutlug, lying weakly at the base of a tree, encircled by the 3 riders. Tu Wu halts his horse abruptly and dismounts with urgency. Sword in hand, he approaches, poised to strike, but he hesitates upon recognizing Khutlug, who is shivering and clutching his wound. After a tense moment, Tu Wu sheathes his sword, his gaze fixed on Khutlug with palpable anger. Tu Wu crouches in front of the injured man, seeing only the frightened boy he is. After a brief silence, Tu Wu says, "You love Sarnai that much? There can be only one of us." He then takes Sarnai's bloody knife and holds it in front of Khutlug's face. Tu-woo nods before carefully opening Kutlug's coat and placing the knife inside for safekeeping, then readjusts the coat over Kutlug's chest. Standing up, then turning to his captain, Tu-woo commands in a low murmur, "Stay with this man until he dies. Afterward, dispose of his body in the river under the ice. As far as anyone knows, we never found who attacked the princess. You lost his trail at the river. If you or your men speak of what occurred here, those will be your last words." The captain nods in understanding. Tu-woo, without another word, turns and makes his way back to the village alone. A maid approaches Tu-woo with concern. "Prince Tu-woo, the princess hasn't eaten properly in 2 days. We're all becoming worried." In the yurt, the fireplace blazes, casting a warm glow and raising the temperature to a comforting level. Tu-woo sits next to his wife, who is lying in bed, appearing almost catatonic, her eyes red from excessive crying. Clutched in her hands for comfort is her mother's shawl. Beside Sarnai, Hana sits, occasionally rearranging her hair or gently caressing her face. Carefully, Tu-woo shifts to lie behind Sarnai. Sliding his hand beneath the blanket, he gently places it on her rounded belly, moving subtly under her clothing to tenderly caress the growing life within. As he kisses her neck, he whispers, "Sarnai, please, you need to eat, for you and for our baby." Sarnai's response is a soft sob, her grief palpable in the quiet of the room. As spring arrives and the snow begins to melt, the path clears for the journey back to the summer settlements. However, Sarnai's health remains fragile, her condition weakened by her prolonged bed rest and lingering emotional distress. She spends most of her time in bed, comforted alternately by Hana, Sashi, and Tu-woo. Occasionally, she ventures outside to enjoy the sunlight and short walks, finding solace in the awakening of nature, which consistently lifts her spirits. Conversations about the traumatic events in the forest are carefully avoided by everyone. With only a week left before the planned departure and mere patches of snow scattered around, the shaman declares that Sarnai is too weak to travel, warning that the journey could endanger her pregnancy. In response, Tu-woo decides they should stay at their current location for the year, a decision supported by Hana and Sashi, who choose to remain as well. The Khan consents, allowing about 60 people to stay behind to attend to their needs, focusing all efforts on Sarnai's well-being. This enforced intimacy in the camp brings back memories of Sarnai's former life, and as her due date approaches, she increasingly embraces her impending role as a mother. The most anticipated moment arrives at the height of summer, on a serene afternoon. The entire camp is tense with anticipation. The labor is grueling for Sarnai, with contractions lasting nearly a full day. Exhausted, drenched in sweat, and weakened from significant blood loss, she finally meets her newborn, handed to her by Tu-woo. In that moment, all her past concerns seem to dissolve, offering her a clean slate for this new chapter of her life. 3 days later, under the bright sunlight outside their yurt, Sarnai, still frail but radiant with love, introduces Prince Boomin to the community. The baby is wrapped in a gray shawl.